Yeah, my name is Daniel, and Niclas will also present this today. As Martin told us, we have a long history in Erlang. Both me and Niclas has been in kind of Erlang community for 10 years. Started from Uppsala University to Erlang Solutions and Klarna and other companies in Sweden using Erlang and Elixir in different parts. Now we have synced together and works at SARC, where we do kind of a chat and kind of VoIP solutions. So today we will talk about Nova, a Erlang web framework that we have worked with kind of with the background is that me and Niclas has worked with quite a lot of Erlang web frameworks during these kind of 10 years, and some of them still are alive, and some of them has kind of been not supported for a very long time. So when we started, we had a kind of Erlang web, and it was like Nitrogen. I did my Erlang project at university with Nitrogen and React when it was early, like React was 0.4 and didn't have delete at that time, so it was kind of hard to do an e-commerce system. But we have kind of felt like you can do really good web services using Erlang, but it, in some way, the people working with Erlang usually do kind of backend server and network things. And from that, when people build kind of web frameworks, it came not from people knowing maybe Erlang in how it works. Like Chicago Boss didn't really follow the OTP kind of structure and did some of things in a magic way. So from this, we have kind of want to build Nova that is a way that you can work with things in a modular way. You can add more applications that we built in Nova and combine them. We want to focus that you can have a good release handling, and we also want to show that it is possible to build good web application using Erlang. And also we want to try to aim that it's easy to use. So we know that we have quite a lot of these kind of things yet to work at, but the idea with Nova also is that it is kind of a view controller today. We haven't added the kind of the modular things, mainly because it's kind of hard to do an ORM thing. I think we will talk about this later. But for the Viewport, we support today the Django template language. And we have this session handling. And also we support from Erlang version 22. And mainly is that we felt there's so much new things from the Erlang version 22 that we didn't want to have a lot of code that we want to depend on versions like Logger. If you use earlier version than 21, then you couldn't use Logger in a good way. And there was a lot of improvement in ads and those that comes with newer things. And early decisions that me and Niclas did was that we focused to only build on Cowboy. So for Nova, you can't choose what kind of web server you want to have. So for now, we only support Cowboy, and we have built features and things on top of Cowboy. And mainly it's also that we have used Cowboy since it kind of started to pop up in the Erlang community from version 1.0 to 2.8 that is running now. And we feel that it's a very stable web server that is accepted through the community and is fast. So So that is kind of, I know that if you take earlier web frameworks like Chicago Boss or Nitrogen, they kind of use Simple Bridge, that you can choose kind of web service you want to have, like MockWeb or Web Machine and those kind of things. But we have mainly focused on keeping it simple in this way, to have just one web server. So, Niclas, do you want to?
Yes, right. So one of the questions that's popped up during today has been, how can I build reusable apps, for example, or subcomponents of a page? So this is a very common problem, I would say, with web applications. You tend to implement the same thing over and over again for different pages, basically. So we had this in mind when we started to develop Nova, that we wanted to have something modular and that you could share between all of your projects. So here in this picture you have like my application, which is your Nova application that you are building right now. And the idea with the whole thing, Daniel, could you move over to the next one? So, for example, if I wanted to add a forum, for example, that's a different dependency, which I could just add. I will show you later on how this works in practice, because you always have problems with URLs and such that might collide with each other and so on. We try to solve that in a fairly good manner. If you move over to the next. So, for example, another one is if you want user management for your application that you include, and the forum might also be piggybacking to this one. So the whole concept of Nova is that you are building smaller building blocks, which you can add together into something large, make something complex out of smaller blocks. So if you go to the next slide. So the sort of brains in Nova is the routing file. This is an Erlang file containing of different maps. If you go to the next one. So we have a couple of different fields in this map. Just to give you a oversight of what's happening here. So we have a security thing. So if you want to add a security like login or something like that on your server or pages, you can define a specific module that can actually handle this. Why we implemented this is because we saw that we were making quite a lot of authentication calls. So this is just to get rid of all the boilerplate code that you usually have. So if you go to the next one, then we have the actual routes. This defines all the routes that you have in your system. So the first one, or the only one here in this example, is the /user. This is the actual URL path, and this is cowboy-styled pathing. So you can actually have bindings, for example, with colon in the beginning of the variable. The second element in this tuple is module function tuple. So just pointing out which module you want to be calling when you're visiting this route with which function. And the last one is a map, taking different options. This can be very useful if you're, for example, are running WebSocket or something more complex application that you want to bring in options, for example. So in this example, you just have the get method for the /user. So if you go to the next slide. Okay, next one.
Yes.
All right, so here you have the prefix. This actually says that all the paths in this map will be prefixed by /v1. So this is how we are solving the, for example, if you take the forum example, you might actually add a prefix for that one that is /forum or something like that. If you take the next slide. So we have spoken a little bit about how Nova works. Maybe some of you are familiar with the MVC models that's out there. But basically you have a controller and you have a view, and usually you have a model as well, but we don't have that. So just focus on the controller view. The controller is the logic code, all the code that you write, and the view is basically the HTML that you generate. So this is a separation of concerns for the two. So here we have defined a very basic Nova controller. We have exported the index with directory1 function, which takes a Nova state. So if you go, let me just check. Yeah, if you go to the next slide. Here you can see that we return the tuple JSON with a map as the second argument here. This will tell Nova that we are actually returning a JSON back to the requester, setting all of the headers and stuff up so that's appropriate, and send back a JSON decoded blob back to the user. If we go to the next one. We have quite a large variety of different, we call them handlers, this last result you return from your controllers. So you could, for example, have status and the status code. This will just return a status code for 1. And here you can see that we are returning OK and a map. This is a bit of a special one because this will try and render the view that is associated with this controller. And that's a DTL view, which is found in a separate location or a separate directory, which contain all of the layouts, and inputs this username as an argument to that one. If you go to the next one. All right, so this might be a little bit fast, but we also have something that we call plugins. So this is to try and manage the regular task or common task that you usually have in your web application. Like, for example, you want to maybe insert a correlation ID in the headers, or you want to benchmark the actual request, for example. So this could be used by plugins. They are written so they should be easy to use, and you can just, it's controlled by the sys configuration. You make it really simple to include or remove plugins in Nova. And you can also do it runtime if you'd like. So next one. So basically the plugins have two different stages. You have a pre-plugin and a post-plugin. This is both for WebSockets and HTTP requests right now. Or maybe increase this with a few other protocols as well, but for now it's WebSockets and HTTP 1. So you have the pre-plugins. They are called upon before the request is reaching the controller. So for example, you could set the correlation ID, or you could add a log entry, or perhaps add a timestamp in the metrics. in the header, sorry, to use for metrics. And you have the post plugin, which can do basically the same. And the idea with the post plugins is also that you can transform the output data from the controller in some way. So if you want to base64 code for some reason, all the responses you do, you can do it with a plugin very, very easily without touching any of your other code. So if you go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, here is just a few of the suggestions we have for plugins that you can use. We also have in Nova plugins that decodes the body, for example. So if you have the header set to application JSON or the content, it will actually parse the body and it will put it into this Nova state you saw in the controller section. Yeah, and next slide. All right, so what's next then on Nova? As I mentioned, and Daniel also mentioned, we are lacking the model handling today. This is mainly because there's no good ORM for Erlang, and it's somewhat, I don't really like the idea of ORMs. They tend to abstract too much. So we are still looking at a good project we can include for this. We also need to improve our documentation and guides quite a lot, actually, because it doesn't say very much now. You have to read all of the source code to get most of it. But we are trying to improve on this. We also have discussed a project which is called Nova Routing. This is to replace the cowboy routing table, just to get a little bit more control of what's happening and everything like that. Some cool features as well. And the last thing is dev tools. We have experienced as well that the Rebar 3 auto plugin isn't really working for us. So we'll probably exchange that, as well as rewriting our templates into a Rebar 3 plugin. But this is some of the things we have spoken of. Okay, Daniel, do you want to take over?
Yes. I will see if I can show you a small demo of how things can work with Nova. So at our GitHub page, we have created the install script that we are going to maybe redo to make a Rebar 3 plugin. But today you can use it, and what it does is that it install a Rebar 3 kind of template, and from here you can create templating up a new Nova session, Nova app. So if we see how it looks, we can see that it has template up like a main controller and a detailed file and Nova roots files that Niclas has discussed. But I was going to show you a small demo of what you can do with Nova. So here we have just a pure templated Nova application, and so I can show it from here. So if we started with the Rebar 3 shell, it will set everything up, and if things now works, you should be able to see that so Nova is running. So this is kind of when you template a new application and you do a Rebar 3 shell, you should see in your web browser that this method Nova is running. So what I have done now is, if we here I have changed how the controller is looking. So what I kind of want to do here is that I want to fetch all kind of repos that has Erlang as topic and just show you the response. So in the detail that we get from the beginning, you see it is like this. It's just an H1 where we template in the message part that we have in the list. So if we recompile this, and go back to our browser, it should take some time. And now you see that this is the JSON that we get back from GitHub, that it kind of keep how many repos we got, list total count, and we have the HTML URL, and we can see also how many that has started this repo, and so it's quite a long list. So my idea here was that we, with the detail, would try to make a nice table and show you that it can be done. So if we
have 3 minutes left.
Yeah, this is the kind of the last part. So if we open this again. So what we do on the left side is the detail that we will get the total count from the JSON, and for each repo in the items list that we have, we will put out the name, HTML URL, and the Stargazer count. And Nova also comes with some like JSON library and SHTTP, like HTTP client. So but I will. So we will recompile this for the last part, and now we will get a nice table showing that stars and the name of the repo and the GitHub link. So this is kind of a small demo what you can do with No and the detail if you want to show it like with views. So that was the demo. So yeah, so thank you everybody and for listening.